It's
Ah,
showtime. We are now live broadcasting from the mountain bike capital of the world, Bentonville, Arkansas. Rob from the city that landed 12th in mountain bike capital of the world voting, Phoenix, Arizona. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good, buddy.
You got a Rob Drew hat on and a Rob Drew shirt?
That's right.
Dude,
I am kitted out.
doubling up. That's danger, dude.
Telling
We
you,
call that a double down.
I'm over the top.
Nice. How's your day been?
It's been busy, man. I'm headed to Disneyland tomorrow with Jen Drew, so had to get everything done today so I
The
could leave.
Disneyland trip.
Yes, sir.
What are you most excited about at Disneyland?
Uh, Beignets, Mickey Mouse beignets, and churros.
Yeah, the churros.
Kind of excited for the Star Wars ride.
Dude, what
Rise
did
of
you
the
tell me last
Rebellion, I think
night?
it is. What? The Oogie Boogie Bash?
The Oogie Boogie Bash.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big
Yeah,
deal.
Oogie Boogie Bash is going to be legit. So every time we try to go around Halloween every year because Jen likes the way that they decorate for Halloween. She's a huge Halloween fan. And every time we would go, as we're at the end of the day, when we're getting ushered out of the park, you see everybody coming in for the party. And we always said, dude, we gotta do this party sometime. But it would be hard to stick around for the party if you've been there all day. So our solution was we're going to drive there tomorrow, get a hotel, take a nap, go to the party, and then go back to our hotel, sleep, and go to the park the next day for a full day.
That sounds like a pretty solid Disneyland trip. I'm excited to hear about it.
It's going to be pretty aggressive, but I go hard.
Let's talk about something just briefly because we're dedicating a lot of this to the Delano Peak.
The Fugazi Delano Peak.
A Fugazi, a Delano.
The Fugazi Delano.
Ferrazzi is what I hear most. Hey, you want that?
I just had somebody reach out to me with a text and goes, "What's this Fugazi bike you're riding?"
Fugazi bike.
Pretty funny.
Speaking of bikes, you just recently got on a bike after making some changes. What was it?
It was the YT Izzo.
Ooh,
Yes,
so we're gonna just
the
let
Izzo and a
sit. We're
side.
gonna let that linger for people. Let's talk about the Delano Peak and the long-term review I just posted, which it's not going to be a surprise to anybody that my review was big thumbs up.
It was positive. It was a positive review.
Well, it was very positive. I really like that bike.
We've had a chance to take it into some deep water.
So let's talk about that. It's a trail bike, and I think it's pretty well positioned in what a trail bike could be called at 135, 150 stock. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And very
I would say that's a mid-level trail bike category.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk trail light. We could talk a few other things.
Yeah, well, it's in between those. It's not a big bike and it's not a small bike.
No,
Switchblade territory.
I think, and I think that the Switchblade will come back up. Let's do this. Let's give me. I want you to give me your couple of minutes on the Delano Peak and your experience on the bike.
So obviously, when we first got the bikes, we built them up, we took them out, we rode them. Mine was already equipped with what they call the long shock, so it was set up at 142, 150, and the only criticism I had at that point was that they put on, it would have come stock with the factory DPX2, and they put on the RockShox Super Deluxe Select. So the Select does not have any compression adjustment. And what I'd like to do typically, especially in the beginning when I'm trying to set up the bike, is set the sag, ride it on a trail I know that's got some heavy hits. And if it blows through the stroke, then I'll usually dial some compression damping in.
Yeah.
And if I have to add 6 clicks of compression, then I need another volume spacer.
Yeah.
Any less than that, and usually I can bump up the pressure a little bit, and it doesn't cost me that much on the initial compliance. And so without having that adjustability, that sort of threw me. And I've currently got that shock on the propane, and it's the same circumstance. It's a entry level shock, and although it works well, it doesn't have the tunability that I would like it to have. So obviously they sent us the X2s, and they went to you. So when I arrived in Tennessee, I didn't change mine. I just wrote it how it was. I did put the 170 Lyric on the front, which was pretty superb. I think that bike would be very happy at 160 in the front. And I actually had an air shaft for the Fox to change it to 160, and I ended up having to give that to Alex, I think.
Yeah.
So what I'll probably do, I've got a Zeb coming for the propane. I'll probably put a 160 air shaft in the Lyric and put it on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have subsequently put the X2 on it, made a huge difference, as it does with every bike you put that shock on.
Okay, now let's talk about that a little bit. It made a big difference in a particular area, especially for you. Can you provide some context? And I think you brought up the Switchblade earlier. I think the Switchblade is part of how you're going to provide this context.
Well, real quick on that question, as a habit, every bike I get, I pull all the pivot bolts out, I clean them, I re-grease them, and I Loctite them and torque them. So I would never trust that that's been done properly, even though most bike builders, at least I can speak to pivot because I have experienced it. They pre-assemble your bike completely. They torque everything, they test everything, they tune the derailleur, run it through the gears, everything's done.
Can you turn off some of your devices? You're distorting all over the place.
Hang on a second.
Yeah. So while you're doing that, I'm going to answer this question of margins. Have you tried the DVO suspension on the Delano? I have. The first bike I got was a comp, $3,500. I got it because it was $3,500. I didn't even care what was on it. And I rode that a lot. And I was pretty impressed with the DVO. I thought the DVO worked well. I haven't ridden it recently, so I think it would be fun to go ride that bike back to back compared to how I have it set up. But I don't have any issues with the DVO. I thought it was pretty decent.
Is my signal better?
Yes, substantially better.
That's good. Bandwidth bandits get you every time.
Yeah. So, okay, come back in because we got some good questions coming up that I like. Okay. And so I want you to talk about.
I turned your internet off.
Sorry, wife. No more internet. So talk about, just very quickly, in comparison to the Switchblade and why the X2 made a difference for you.
So obviously the pivots are developed here at South Mountain where I ride regularly. And one of my favorite aspects of riding is technical climbing, especially lifts. I enjoy the nuance and the challenge of those things. And so most of the pivots with the DW link are very efficient in those types of moves. We've talked about the last pedal stroke of a lift when you're trying to transition your body weight and lift the back. It's really important that they have a lot of anti-squat so that when you load the pedal, you have a platform to step off of instead of soaking up that energy. And what I noticed in the beginning with the Fezzari is that it had a propensity to just absorb that last most critical pedal stroke, and I'd find myself not getting up lifts that I would be getting up easily on other bikes. So that was the one attribute that I felt was a strike against it in a heads-up comparison against the Switchblade. But there were places where descending rugged terrain where I felt that it actually did a little bit better than the Switchblade did. And so that's one of those trade-offs. I personally appreciate and value highly the handling aspect that allows me to climb. That means a lot to me. It's real important. But for a lot of people, that's a factor that they might even never experience. It might not be relevant at all. So that brings up a good bike for me might not be a good bike for somebody else. A good bike for somebody else might not be a good bike for me. It depends what you're trying to do, what your objectives are.
Yeah. You're breaking up a ton, dude. I think everybody got to hear most of that, but I hope everybody got to hear most of that, because to kind of summarize, that's a big issue for you. You've ridden a lot of DW link bikes, how you ride and where you normally ride. You're very dialed into what happens. And so for it not to happen like that, and we experienced it when we went and rode Greer in San Diego, that bike was pretty new to you and you had to adjust. And throughout the course of that ride, you adjusted very well to what it took for the bike to work in that capacity. And at this point, you've been riding it a lot and you seem to be pretty happy with that bike.
Yeah, it's a really good bike. It's a great bike for the price.
Yeah.
And we talked about the other day, I've got some new bikes that I thought were utilizing very aggressive geometry, but when I line them up on my bike rack, the one that stands out with the steepest seat tube is the Fezzari, which was striking to me. As much as I know it has a steep seat tube, I didn't. That's pretty funny.
Oh, I'm glad Thomas is here. Always coming up with the funny things. So yeah, the seat tube is.
Yeah, I'm sorry about my internet connection, guys. It's so horrible. I definitely am going to have to step up my internet game.
We're definitely going to have to get it up. Now let's look at this one. Drogos 79. Did you get close to bottoming out that 160? All else being equal, was it really necessary over 150? I'll answer. I don't know that it's necessary per se. I mean, I rode the bike in the stock setup with the DPX2 and the 150/36 in Phoenix at South Mountain, which has some pretty gnarly terrain. And I thought it did pretty well. We went to Windrock. That's why I went the 160 Zeb and the X2, just because I wanted to. We were told that was a big place, and it is. And I didn't feel like I was stretching the limits of that bike with the 142 X2 and the 160 Zeb. I probably could have ridden it completely stock and I would have been fine. So, I don't know.
Yeah, so what I would say, pedal clearance out here comes at a premium, so you never want to give it up if you can avoid it. And the Fezzari was one of the few bikes that I don't prefer in the high position. And not to mention the fact that with the X2 on it, you have interference mounting the shock on the bike to start with. So in the high position, that shock won't even fit.
Yeah.
So that being the case, that lowers the back of the bike. And so adding the longer fork picks up a little bit of the space that you lose from the shock. And so I saw the benefit there.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a case-by-case basis. You know, people who are in a situation where they're riding, the pedal clearance isn't much of an issue. Like here, I don't have that issue like you do. So I think there's definitely a difference. What about this one? And we've answered this quite a few times. I mean, what do you think here?
I've had great luck with the X2. I think it's a good shock. The only and Fox shocks every year have gotten better and better to the point that I'm very comfortable riding them. But one thing that I have noticed is when you bottom a Fox fork, it really lets you know you did it. And when you bottom a rock shock, you can do that without noticing. So rock shock, in my experience, tends to be looser moving, a little bit more linear, a little faster. And Fox is a little more damped, has a little more stiction. And so all things being equal, I prefer the performance of the rock shock.
Yeah, it comes back to your preference. That's what you
Absolutely.
prefer.
They're both great. Some people hate everything I love about RockShox and vice versa. And so it's just a personal preference thing.
And this right here too, Jared brings up, we do a lot of work with SRAM. We do, but that doesn't have a bearing on this particular discussion. We do work in the way of teaching their staff with skills clinics. And quite honestly, I mean, yeah, they'd prefer we're on RockShox, but they don't really care. And I've always felt this way ever since I first started riding. And the first time I rode a Pike, it was a game changer for me. So I've appreciated them even more. And like Rob says, it's a personal thing, but Fox is getting better. And so I rode a 38 on that Scott Ransom, and dude, that fork was awesome. Like, I was really impressed with that fork. The 36 is much better, and I'll give you a little bit of insight since we're on the topic. I rode the Spur or the Izzo today, and it's got the new Fox 34. I called you halfway in and was like, man, I'm impressed. It doesn't deflect. The chassis doesn't deflect like the old one did. So I was happy. I went and rode a place that was a little bit higher speed and had an abrupt hit into a rock garden. And I left a couple fillings on the trail because as they do, the thing went right through the stroke and bottomed out violently. Like, I'm surprised you didn't hear it in Phoenix.
I was wondering what that noise was.
Yeah, that was me bottoming out that fork. And it wasn't a very hard hit, but it just was one of those things where I almost called you and said, right in the trash with this fork. And I'll throw every volume reducer I can in it. I still
you need to spend some time. You need to spend some time giving it every chance, tuning wise.
Well, I will. I'll put more volume reducers in it, but it was funny because I went to go add in some more. It's got high and low speed compression. I went to add in some more high speed, and it was max, dude. Max. So what I'm going to do is text Noah Sears at MRP and probably get a ramp control cartridge and try to do that.
Yeah, the ramp control is nice because you can. It's like adding volume spacers on the trail. You can adjust it on the fly, and that's beneficial.
Yeah, of course, Jason Blodgett cares that we're on Fox. He doesn't like that. We want to be on RockShox. And another thing too with this is, if I could get a Super Deluxe Ultimate for the rear, I would want to run that. And you were not a fan of running RockShox rear and Fox front. So it's just funny. There's a preference to trying to run the same brand from an aesthetics thing, but then some of the characteristics I think will cross over front to back, right?
I think so. It seems to me that more OEs are Fox shocks, and I could be wrong about that. It might just be the ones that I'm more exposed to, but I think in most cases that's sometimes the reason why you'll often see a RockShox fork and a Fox shock.
So we got this question right here: between a Fox 38 and a 36, which is better? I don't know if it's that
well, unless you're really critical on weight, the 38 is better.
Yeah.
And if you're riding something that's 140, it's probably going to be more than you need. But I would say from 150 on, I don't know if the 38 is available below 160, but I would say even if you got a 150 fork bike going to a 160 38, it's not gonna hurt your feelings.
So we're gonna answer this one, and then I want to come back to something you said earlier, or we're gonna kind of dive into this. So his 34 is extremely linear. 2 spacers brought ramp up to where it became plush off the top and supportive. For most of the ride today, it works pretty well. On those higher speed, abrupt square edge hits, dude, violent, super violent.
What pressure did you have in it?
Man, I have it written down. So
it should be in your front of mind.
Well, it's somewhere around low to mid 80s, I think. So I'm in the 180 to 200 pound range, and I go on the higher end of that range. So I want to say 87 PSI.
Are you basing it off of Fox's advice?
Yes, on the stanchion of the fork, it has that.
Yeah, I found that to be. I found it to be usually quite a bit high for me.
Yeah,
So what I would say is, if you put a volume spacer in, you'll be able to drop the pressure 10 pounds. The compliance on the top will be better, and then you'll be more resistant to bottoming with the ramp.
that's the plan. I wanted to ride it completely stock, like I told you. So I'm gonna do well. And what's crazy is I was set to put a band or two in the rear
Yeah.
on the DPS. Dude, the rear worked great.
Yeah, that shock has very little volume to start with, so you're going to make a huge impact if you put a spacer in that.
Dude, I was super impressed with how well it worked.
Yeah, so I would say you need to, once you have a setup on a fork, whether it's a Lyric or whether it's a Fox 36, 38, 34, once you have a setup, that should be what you do right out of the gate. I mean, even with the air pressure, like if you know you need a volume spacer, put the volume spacer in. Don't give yourself a chance to not like the bike initially because you didn't do all the things you knew you needed to do on setup.
Yeah. But again, I guess part of it is a lot of people won't know that. They won't put volume reducers in. Like for me, I would put a volume reducer at least in the fork and just go. My thought is I just want to go ride it and see what happens. See how it works.
Well, if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of time on bikes and you're getting a bike, then you would ride it how it comes. But if you're a person who should know better, then that you need to document your setups and get your setup right to start with.
Yes. So this is documented at the starting point, and we're going to make those changes, and I'll come back to that a little bit. My question to Drogos here is, how much do you weigh? I'm curious how much you weigh, because at 190 pounds, I think it would be much different if you were between 150 and 170. That's a lot of weight, and I'm charging pretty hard. So the Butler brings this up. On motocross, you wanted to bottom out on the biggest jump, so you knew you were using as much travel as you could. Is that similar on a mountain bike?
No, I would say so. This is purely my opinion, but what I will tell you is you should expect to bottom out on the biggest things, but for I would say 60% of the riding you're doing, you want to be using all of your travel. If it means you have to check it on the biggest hits, then check it on the biggest hits. But and for motocross, I would say the same thing, because I did a little of that. If your bike is set up for that huge huck to flat, it's going to be terrible everywhere else. And so I would rather the bike works good on 70% of the track and gives up a little on that one obstacle versus setting it up for the biggest thing and having it lack performance everywhere else.
Yeah, I agree. So Eric's got a Delano on order. It's his first full suspension bike. Do you think he's having a midlife crisis, Rob?
Nope. If he'd have said to me, I have 6 bikes on order and they're all coming, I would have said, you might have an issue.
You might.
But that is not a problem at all.
What about this, Rob? Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Strong.
Hey now, Andrew Strong coming through with a nice donation for a latte or an Onyx shake. I like it.
Yes. What's your favorite pair of clipless shoes and pedals for trail enduro riding? I'll let you answer first.
So I always stick with the inventor of the SPD pedal. That is Shimano. I run the XT Trail pedal. I also currently have a set of XTR pedals because that was all I could get my hands on. But I typically run the XTs on all my bikes. And I have multiple bikes and I like to have pedals on every bike. So, buying $100 pedals, that kind of investment will add up. But I've never had a Shimano pedal fail on me. I've bent them tremendously to where I had to take them off and replace them. But I've never had a failure of a pedal from those pedals, and so I've been very happy with them.
So you've never had a violent spindle break?
Never had that happen to me. I've had violent pedal strikes that just sent me for huge rides that were very painful, and the spindle's bent, but I never did break one.
What about shoes?
I am currently running the Giro
Chamber.
Chamber 2. Yeah, I've got the Chamber 2. It's a great shoe. I've been very happy with it. It's a little long on the tooth right now. They're kind of coming apart at the seams. I need a new pair. I buy things on the spur of the moment typically. And so I was at my local my local bike shop, Action Ride Shop. They typically are very good about stocking things, but as anybody will tell you in these current times, it's difficult to get what you want. And so they happen to have a pair of the new 510 Adidas Hellcats.
Ooh.
And they had them in my size. And so I thought, hey, now I exclusively wear Adidas socks. So I'll go with these Adidas partner shoes. And so I have them. I've ridden them a couple times. They have a very stiff base to them. And so for hike-a-bike, they're not as comfortable. And I'm so dialed into how the Chamber 2s feel on the pedals and how I move and manipulate my weight on those shoes. I'll have to make a commitment to adjust to the 510s. I don't want to say that I don't like them. That's not the case. I've only ridden them a couple times. They're different, and so I'll have to make an investment of time to adjust. I'm hoping I can get some Chamber 2s, and it won't matter.
Rode the HT pedals that I have for a while, right? And you weren't a fan because of the lack of float, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I like to have a lot of float in my through my pedal strip. My feet tend to move, and if they get locked in place, it hurts my knees.
So very important piece, very particular and unique to you.
Yes.
Andrew, I run HTs. The T1 is the pedal I run the most. I like the HT. They work very well. They look cool. To me, they have a little bit more of a platform than the XT. There's a little bit more solid engagement feel, and you're locked in. There's less float. I run the 4-degree float on mine, and I'm a big fan of them. As far as shoes go, I've had some specialized shoes recently, the 2FOs, and I really like the 2FOs, but I also have the Chamber 2s. I like the Chamber 2s. And then I have a pair of Shimano ME7s that are also rad. I got those from Rob because they were too tight. So I really, really dig those. Dude, look, Gregory Harris coming in $5.
Boom! Gregory Harris,
And
my
then he
hero.
comes in,
Star of the evening.
of the Peak Elite build versus the comp, worth the extra $1,000. That's totally up to you, Gregory. I had the comp build. I still have a comp. That's the first bike I got, and I still have it as a demo bike for people to ride. And I remember when they sent it, I told them these wheels they're not going to work. These wheels are going to be a major issue. And the wheels stayed on the bike the whole time. I rode the heck out of it. I loved it. I don't know. I'm simple. And for me, I would take a comp and I would probably put a better set of wheels on it. That's my take. So
yeah,
it's up to you.
My experience is any package upgrade like that, when you buy the bike, is always going to be a better value than if you bought those upgraded pieces.
There you go.
So if you think, for me, for instance, wheels are critical. And so if I could buy a bike with no wheels on it, knowing the wheels I'm going to put on it, then I would do that. But the Fezzari comes with the i9 hubs the way that we got them, and it comes with the NV wheels, which so I'm just saying, like, those wheels have been the engagement is not as good as the Hydras, but it's certainly good enough that you don't need to replace them.
Yeah, I agree. And again, this is something that I think it's unique to sometimes your personality, sometimes you're riding, a lot of things. Like, I'm okay saying that engagement is very important, but I rode those stock wheels that have really horrible engagement, and I just adapted to it and rode. Would I do that all the time? No.
Well, with engagement, if you don't have an option, you'll likely not be aware of it. If you're not doing super technical climbing with a lot of resets, you won't notice the delay. When you're engaged and you're pedaling, it's a non-factor. It's only when you reset the pedals in really technical, tight situations that it becomes a problem. So for most people, it's a non-issue. Pro tip I will give you though, if you're getting the Delano with the NV wheels, or if you're just buying NV wheels for your bike, when I went to put the Cush core in the NV wheels, NVs have like a rim band around them versus rim tape, and I took that thing off, I put rim tape on, and I put the Cush core in and didn't think about it again. What I have since discovered is NVs are a very compliant wheel. And what happens when that wheel complies with an obstacle is the spokes will go through the rim. And the reason that band is there is to keep the spokes from poking through tape. So you're going to want to keep those in. I've subsequently put Cush core in for other people. The Cush core will fit with the rim bands in. The Cush core valve stems will work in place of the interlocking NV valves. So yeah, don't be like me. I took them out and threw them in the trash. Just so dumb. So I'm going to probably have to buy another set. If anybody at NV's watching and you want to send me a set of 29-inch rim bands, I'd love to put them back in. Sorry about that.
Nobody at NV's watching, dude. They don't care.
My bad.
Though, this is cool because I don't know if I sent you a picture of this, but I sent it to the marketing team at Fezzari, actually. Captain Pedro. He ordered himself a Delano Peak Elite. He plans on finishing up the southern half of the Colorado Trail next summer. How's the climbing? I think the climbing's fine. Again, is it the best climbing trail bike? Probably not. I'm okay saying that, but
hang on. This is what I'll say about it. So if you heard our conversation about the bike earlier and what I would categorize, I guess, as my complaint about climbing, it was in very specific technical situations. It wasn't referring to it as to climb up like a steep fire road or just a trail that is steep and doesn't have technical lifts. Under those circumstances, I have no issue with it. I think it's a great ride it all day bike. I've done some 30-mile rides on it. There's nothing about it that way that would trouble me to take it on a big mission. I think it's legit.
And in the video that we just did, the long-term review, dude, I pedaled up almost 2,000 feet to get to that spot.
You were crying like a baby though, man.
That was all for show, bro. I was acting. Acting. Like really, I was not being.
Well, you are a true thespian because I believed it.
Yeah, that's good. So I think you're going to dig it. I think it's going to be great for the Colorado Trail. What I have found with the bike, like for my wife, it's got a trail I9 wheel on it. That's a thinner hoop and some 2.4 recons with XC Cush core. So those wheels are pretty light and she digs it. So changing the wheels and tires made a big difference for her and more cross country the bike up a little bit. So that's what I like about it is you can, with a change of wheel set, kind of change the dynamic of that bike, in my opinion. How about this one right here? Delano Peak versus the Ripmo. I don't think anything climbs better than the Ripmo in this category. Here's what I can tell you. I've not ridden a Ripmo, so I can't directly answer this, but the going down piece is interesting because a lot of people said the Delano Peak gets overwhelmed in sustained chunky terrain. And I loved your response to that, Rob. What did you say?
What I said was, if you're smashing into every single rock on the trail, any bike's going to get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so for me, what I try to do is create double ups, get the bike off the ground, both for the bike's sake and for my sake.
Yeah.
And I've not had a situation, National is about a 20-minute descent if you do a full pull from top to bottom. And I've not had any issue with the bike being overwhelmed on that trail or any others I've ridden it on. So I have not experienced that problem. And without seeing, without riding with the person who made that claim and seeing what they're up against, I just don't know. I don't have a point of reference for that.
Yeah. And I wish I did. I really wish I had some time on a Ripmo because so many people ask about that bike, and I've heard great things about that bike.
Yeah, I'd love to ride one. Just haven't had a chance.
By all accounts, yeah, Ibis make great bikes. So that's one of those scenarios where I'd be okay saying, I mean, it's it's probably a draw. So then it comes back to which bike can you get and
what's the best value?
What's the best value? So yeah. And like, speaking of that, Connor, should I get a Canyon Stoic? Dude, I don't even know what a Canyon Stoic is. And I've never ridden anything on Canyon. I was supposed to, I was all fired up to, and then dark, nothing. So I have no idea.
I got an email today from Canyon telling me that the Neuron is in stock and available. So I jumped on their website and I selected a large and I looked at the dimensions. That is a very short bike.
Tiny,
very
dude.
short bike.
Old. It's very old. They came up with like a new trail version to kind of make it not so long in the tooth, but
yeah, it's the large has a cockpit reach of a small medium bike these days.
Yeah, that's crazy. Allen Iverson, you talking about practice? You talking about practice? Not a game, practice.
Allen Iverson.
You don't know what I'm saying. Everybody who's watching, I hope that
Allen Iverson sounds like a basketball player.
He is a basketball player, and he's most famous for they called him out about not practicing hard. And he did a press conference. He says, "You talk about practice. Practice. Not a game, practice." And it was dude, you got to watch it. It was hilarious. So Al Iverson, I did ride the Izzo, and you're not going to hear about my experience.
You're going to see when the camera's rolling.
You'll see when the video, and we'll talk about that. I think there's a time and a place.
I'm happy to share my experience.
We'll get to that. You're not going to share your.
I have no secrets.
So sticking with the Delano, you keep coming back to value. Value is something that we have said over and over again. And I think that's a very important thing, because the pro build is, man, I'm drawing a blank. I want to say it's around $6,400.
$64.99.
Okay. Pro build $6,499. What would an equivalent Switchblade be?
$9,000. So here's the thing. The carbon wheel upgrade is $2,000 on a pivot. And the thing that really struck me about the Delano when we got it and we opened the box was the EXO group set comes as an EXO group set. Ooh. It comes with an X-Dome cassette, and almost every other manufacturer I know, when they offer an XO, now they put a GX cassette on to save money. And that's like a $400 difference. And for me, that X-Dome cassette will last 2 seasons with no issues. You basically never have to replace it.
Yeah.
But if you have the lesser cassette, it's not going to last. And so when I talk about value, those are the kind of things I'm talking about. To shortcut the build spec to save money, I get it. You get a better price to the customer, but they paid for it because they didn't get the part either.
Yeah.
It's like saying, well, we're going to lower the price of our bike, and they make it aluminum instead of carbon. Well, of course you had to lower the prices. The quality's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. That was something that stood out to me as well, because with the amount of bikes that I've been riding lately, I've been seeing that. And it's just, man, it's crazy, the difference. And that's part of it, I think, when it comes back to value. And I think another part of that is the customer service piece. And again, this is something that is, I don't want to go too deep into this, but we've dealt with Fezzari, and the dealings with them have been very good. And I've made no secret about the amount of people that have reached out to me about that bike is more than any other brand. And so I've done my due diligence and hung out in chat rooms in different places and interacted with people and asked them straight up, what has been your experience? And dude, if I've heard anybody say anything negative, it's more about supply chain issues than anything.
Yeah, it's constantly shocking to me how many people are just oblivious to the fact that the world is on its heels. Nobody can get anything. That's just the way it is. It doesn't matter the business you're in. Do you have a burger stand? You can't get potatoes for your French fries. You can't get beef. You can't get buns. Nobody can get anything. I mean, we have cars torn apart, just waiting and waiting and waiting, weeks and weeks and weeks for parts. Sometimes we don't even know when we're going to see them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of it. Connor, here's what I'll say, man. The Elite build is a great build, but I also have the comp, and the comp at $3,500, I just think is a great build. And you talk about something good for trips, dude, buy the comp and you got a couple grand left over to take one of those trips. That's the way I would look at it. You can certainly, if you have the means to buy the Elite, I would say buy the Elite, especially if that's what's available now.
Yeah, the only reason I would, so if the up spec bike has the parts you would otherwise buy, get that. But if it has parts that you don't, that you're likely going to change, like if you have a specific handlebar you like because it has a certain sweep or a certain rise, don't pay extra for a better handlebar. Get the cheaper bike. If you have a wheel set that you prefer, don't pay for a better wheel set if it's not going to be the wheel set you want. Get the cheaper bike and change the wheels. And nowadays you can get some money out of the takeoff parts too. So don't shortchange that aspect of it. Even the most inexpensive, low quality set of wheels is going to be a bonus to somebody who just needs a set of wheels. When they were riding last weekend and they broke their wheel, they're jammed up. So
how do you feel about this? I think Thomas has a good point here, and I've heard a lot of people say this. Give me a better shifter versus better derailleur.
That's very true. Really, really true with the GX versus the X01, XX1. If you upgrade to the better shifter because it's got a bearing in it, and so the lever action, your thumb will not know the difference between an X01 derailleur or a GX derailleur. It really will not.
Yeah, that's funny. I agree, man. Great input there, Tom.
Yeah, and the other thing is stay on top of your, if you're running a cable-driven shift system, stay on top of your shifter cable. I have a box of cables out in my garage, and I'm religious about changing them because if they get moisture in them or they get any kind of a kink or damage, suddenly the shifting performance will go right in the gutter, especially on the downshifts.
Dude, how much did that box cost you?
I don't know, but it's the same box. I'm still working.
I know, dude. Box. I looked at buying one and I was shocked at how much it was, but you changed them a lot, right?
Yeah, all the time. Matter of fact, the housing, I have a lot of cables, but the housing is about gone. So I gotta order a new box of housing pretty soon.
Yeah. So Margin made the comment about customer service, and they answer questions, and that's what I can tell you is I've had a pretty good experience in that regard with some of my stuff, and they're good. I think they're a small enough company that they're quick to respond and they get it. They understand that it's very important. Like the basis of consumer direct is you're directly connected.
You need to be directly communicating with the consumer.
Yeah. And it's a crazy time because all signs point to that direct to consumer model just really doing well, but who knows? I mean, are we ever going to see bike shops go away? I don't know.
I don't think so. And the reason is because to me, bicycles are a very simple piece of machinery because I deal with cars. I came from a motorcycle background, but to the average person, there's some voodoo involved. And so there's always going to be a place for a good service department at a local bike shop. And the truth of the matter is, and I'm a perfect example, like I can order anything I want off Amazon and get a great price and get it fast. But I want to walk in and touch and feel. Like every time I go into action, I walk through the helmet row and I test fit I got this weird shaped head and I'm in search of the helmet. I'm in search of the helmet that's going to feel right. And they always have a huge inventory of helmets that I can try on and see if there's anything that's gonna take care of me. Always tons of tires and
shape and head.
I'm the guy who likes to just buy it right now. And when I'm there, I go there for a tire and I walk out with a dropper seat post and a new seat, and I've spent $400 or $500.
God bless you.
Amen. And so I think that there's always going to be a place for that to be the case. Maybe more manufacturers will go direct to consumer, but the problem is, and I've talked with some people and some big brands about this, there is a benefit to the manufacturer having a layer in place to deal with warranty, to deal with service problems, especially if they're qualified. If it's a dealer network like say Pivot has, of qualified dealers who understand the nuance of their bikes.
Yeah.
Like let's say a customer buys a $9,000 Firebird and they're pissed because they can hear the cables rattling inside the carbon. Well, that's an easy solution for somebody who understands those bikes. But for someone who doesn't, they'd be chasing their tail for who knows how long, and that's a problem. So it's really important to deal with a place that has skilled help and some experience to know what they're talking about.
So talking about skilled help, you obviously are pretty handy there with the tools. Tony asks, how often do you change the cable and the housing?
I would say if I'm riding a bike regularly, I'll change the housing at least once a month. Yeah, and sometimes I'll go through 2 cables in that time.
And so that's just a product of how much you're shifting.
Yeah. Now with that said, I have 3 sets of axis, so almost everything I'm riding currently is axis. So and if I'm going to change to a bike that doesn't have it, I'll just switch it.
So then how about this, dude? Let's just very quickly. Cable housing is one. What are some other, like, I don't know, your top 3 maintenance items that you do on a regular basis?
So on a regular basis, hugely important, every single ride, clean the chain ring, and the jockey wheels. If you don't do this, what you're going to start to experience first is chains dropping, really bad shifting performance, especially on the downshifts, like shifting to the harder gear. That's where the bike will hesitate and not want to shift. You're forcing it on the upshift, so usually upshifts don't suffer like downshifts do. But keeping the drive system clean is imperative. It also gives you a chance to inspect everything. If your chain wears, or, it shows signs of wear, especially with the X-Dome cassette with SRAM, the cassette's going to be fine. But if the chain starts to wear out, if you ride a lot, if you are putting down a lot of power, you're going to want to stay on top of the chain and make sure you change the chain ring with the chain.
Okay.
The next thing, always check your axle to be sure that it's tight, for 2 reasons. Because if the axle gets loose, that will affect the spacing of the derailleur to the cassette, and it's so precise. The slightest misalignment will cause you all kind of trouble.
So if you start to experience awkward shifting, check your axle, right?
Well, 2 things to check immediately on the trail: lock your derailleur and check it to make sure that the derailleur is tight. If the derailleur is tight, check the axle is tight. And axle being loose can ultimately be a fatal issue, because what will happen is where the threads are cut in, if it's loose, the wheel will jar against it and it can shear that right off. I had that happen to me, and it took 45 minutes to get the cactus needles out with 2 guys with leather mitts pulling them out of me.
So
it was bad. Yeah, it's terrible. And then I had to walk 5 miles with a bike to carry.
Oof. Okay, so we have chain, drivetrain 1. We have check your axle 2. What's your third most important mechanical tip?
Tire pressure.
Okay.
Tire pressure is religious. Every ride, you've got to check your tire pressure.
Okay. I like that, tire pressures. I'm going to give you 2.
Okay.
What are they?
Trying to think what things you would need to be religious, like on the daily, about that I've missed.
Well, these don't have to be daily. I mean, these can be.
Well, like I would say every 3 rides, you're going to check your suspension air pressure settings.
Yeah, that's.
But usually you'll feel with tire pressure and suspension pressure, you'll feel a change. The problem with tires is, you could have burped a tire in a ride, and that's a great point, especially here in the desert. Every 30 days, I'll add sealant if my tires last that long. So I cut tires and and destroy tires so frequently, I usually don't end up with dry sealant. But if I have a tire on my bike for 30 days, I'll pull the core out, add 2 more ounces of sealant, and keep on rolling. Because there's nothing worse than getting a puncture and dust comes out.
Yeah, I've had that, and it's funny because I don't remember to check.
Yeah,
certain
it's
bikes.
easy to forget. And when you get a puncture and you don't have sealant in there, guess what? It doesn't seal.
Yes, I agree.
And even with plugs they'll plug a hole, but they're meant to work in conjunction with sealant.
Yeah, I've had that a few times where I'm just like, yeah, I'm getting in nothing, and it's like, dang it, dude, I thought I had it. So I have been very on top of that. And two, you get those aliens in there that you got to get out. Like the sealant hardens and then it starts bouncing around.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Those are some good ones.
Well, there's been some developments in sealant technology.
Really?
Yes, from the Stans company to mitigate alien development inside your tires.
So you are a Stans fan then? That's your sealant of choice.
I do a little testing for Stans.
Ooh.
Yes,
Okay.
I have a high level source close by who's very helpful to me and allows me the opportunity to test products and give input. And I very much appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, I've used it. That's what I would use the most, just because I'm so used to it, and that's just what you get. But I've been trying a few different ones. Most recently, the Specialized sealant, which comes in the bottle that looks like the water bottle. It's so funny.
Yeah.
It says "Do not drink" on it, very large.
That's awesome.
It's been good. I like this one though. Thomas, clean your dropper post. If your frame is carbon, I've had the post get seized to the frame. Have you ever had that?
I have not had that happen in a carbon frame, but I typically will grease the post before I install it. On some bikes, to get the Izzo is a perfect example. When you tighten that post clamp, it doesn't want to clamp on the post. So you put friction paste in there, which is basically like grease with sand in it.
Yeah.
And the friction paste, when you tighten down on it, will bite in, and that will help you get the grip you need without having to over tighten and potentially crush things.
Yeah.
And so that's good on. Sometimes you'll find on your brake levers, on carbon bars, you tighten the crap out of them and they still move. Loosen them up, put a little bit of that friction paste in there, tighten them back up, and there's a lot of places where you can put that stuff, and it will give you a lot of benefit without having to reef on the bolts.
Yeah, that's something that, dude, talking about that. So this past weekend was the Oz Trails Off-Road, the Epic Rides event here in Bentonville. And I was lucky enough to be the announcer for that event, ladies and gentlemen. Hey now. And it was pretty cool. So we're getting everybody fired up for the Amateur 50. And there's this dude, Davis, like pretty muscled up dude, full Lycra. And I don't remember what he was riding, but full gnarly bike. And it's 3, 2, 1, go. And they're off. And homeboy takes off on his first crank. Broke his carbon handlebar off right in his hand, dude.
Equally.
Yes.
He was fired up.
He was fired up. I was like,
tore the handlebars right off that thing.
So, dude, what he said was the bike shop, he felt that they over tightened his brake lever and it broke off right at the brake lever. And I was shocked. I've never seen it. And so
I've seen carbon handlebars break right at the edge of the stem. And it's the same thing. You know, you over tighten it and it almost pierces it.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes to just.
Yeah. It's like you score it.
Yeah.
And then the thing's going to break on you. So gnarly. So gnarly. How about this one? Andrew Strong asking about favorite brakes for trail or enduro bikes.
So I'm going to get a little controversial here.
Ooh.
I was always a SRAM guide fan.
Okay.
And the guide ultimates were what I had on all my bikes. But there was a time when, especially here in Phoenix, the the plastic plungers or pistons inside the master cylinder, the tolerance was made without a consideration for the fact that when the black master cylinder would get hot, the bore would shrink, and you'd pull the lever in and it would stick and be holding brake pressure. And there were many circumstances that this happened to me, and it was very troubling. And so normally you just go to your local bike shop and give them the serial numbers off of them, and they would warranty them, and bing, bang, boom, it was easy. But that was happening a lot, and it got to the point where it became more difficult to get them warranted. And at that point, I just started using Shimano brakes. And I did not used to like Shimano brakes because they were super sensitive. It was like an on-off switch. They've done some work to create improved modulation. The biggest thing was they went from 2 pistons to 4 pistons, and that really helped. Mm-hmm. But what I really like about their brakes is the free pull before the brake engages is very light. And so the engagement point, the pad contact point, is very distinct. And so it's real easy to know exactly when you're engaging the brakes. And the newest SRAM brakes have a little bit heavier pull, so it makes the engagement point a little bit more vague. That said, I'm currently running code RSCs on all of my bikes. Yeah. And once I acclimated to those brakes, I really very much like the modulation of them, the feel of them.
Hang on, dude, you're going to love this.
Space shuttle tolerances.
Oh, I love it.
It's all it takes, baby. Look at what happened to the Challenger.
So we're gonna get Jason on next. He's one of the guys that's going to be perfect to get on here. So we will do that very soon. Eric Beyer. Yes, I have ridden the Izzo. Next question. When it comes to downhill capabilities, how does the rail compare to the Delano Peak? I've never ridden a rail. What's a rail?
Rebel. That's the 27.5 bike. 27.5 long travel.
Okay. I see. Okay. So no, I don't know because I haven't ridden that. But
I've heard very good things about that bike. It's a 27.5 bike. A lot of people set it up as a mullet. It was the first bike that they released, and so it's kind of a dated format, but that makes it great for mullet because it wasn't too slack to start with. So when you pick that bike up, you get additional pedal clearance, and then you've got the benefits of 29 up front, benefits of 27.5 in the rear. Everybody I know who's running that bike that way has said great things about it. When I got my Rascal, I probably would have ordered one, but didn't have any at the time. So I also have not ridden one.
So how about this? AJ asks, brake rotor size versus 4-piston over 2-piston for better first upgrade?
Rotor for sure. Rotor because more brake surface and a bigger diameter is going to be your biggest benefit, and certainly cost is less. It's a more affordable improvement to your brakes than buying 4-piston brakes.
And the other piece I can tell you, another really cost-effective improvement for brakes is better braking technique. So instead of buying things, be better about modulating your body to better make use of your brakes. And that's something that what I come back to is, dude, I raced multiple BMEs on 180 rotors with 2-piston XT brakes. On my,
two pistons will provide all the braking force that you need. But another thing that you can consider is the brake pad material. A lot of people prefer metallics for durability and heat resistance, but I find that organic pads actually perform better for me. So if I'm not in a circumstance where I'm doing monstrous descents that are going to burn my brakes up, like in Italy or Whistler, then I'll typically go to a organic pad, and I like the way that the brakes work better that way.
Oh, so hang on. It was Rascal that he meant. And so you have a Rascal.
Yeah, Rascal's a fantastic bike. What was he comparing it to?
How does it compare to a Delano?
it's comparable for sure. It tends, because of the can-filled suspension, it tends to feel like a bigger bike than it is.
Yeah.
But it's not. Delano's got more current geometry, and you can notice that too.
Yeah, I think that's an important.
They're both. I think they're both fantastic bikes, and they're both really good values. So that would fall down to a personal choice. I wouldn't say. There are places where I like the Delano better than the Rascal. There are places I like the Rascal better than the Delano. But they were both, and I just ordered my Revel online. So they're also you can buy them direct, which allows them to extend a better price right to the consumer. And they offer a great value. I bought the frame and fork kit. I didn't get the complete bike, but they're doing their own carbon wheels. I've heard great things about those. The guys that work there are super cool dudes, very knowledgeable in the bike space. And they've got a platform that works. A lot of people will complain that they're not turning out new, crazy, cutting edge stuff every day, but they've got a platform that's very successful.
Yeah.
There is something too. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. What about brake maintenance? What do you suggest for brake maintenance?
I would say plan to obviously check your pads frequently, because you don't want to waste a rotor finding out you needed pads.
Yeah, and that's easy.
So yeah, it's easy to do it. Check your pads, and then beyond that, if your brakes are working properly, if the bleed is good, then you really don't need to do anything to them. I like to clean when I wash my bike. I like to clean. So I'm crazy about clearing the brakes after washing the bikes. There have been times where I've gotten some kind of contaminant on the brakes and it doesn't want to clear. Like, you can drag them just literally all day long and they won't clear. What I found is, when I'm washing the bike, if I spray the rotor and into the caliper with Simple Green seems to be effective at neutralizing any pad contaminants, and then after that, I end up with really good bite on my brakes.
Interesting. All right. Who knew? What
yeah,
about
and then bleeding wise, I would say plan to replace your fluid every year if you keep the bike that long.
Okay, so what do you think of this one?
So the biggest, I think motorcycle forks are getting more similar now as they're starting to experiment with air. And I've heard a lot of people complain about air forks on moto, but I think their complaint is simply that it's different. Like, they're used to what they're used to, and it's different.
Yeah.
I think going to air on motorcycles is genius, for the same reasons I think it's fantastic on bicycles, because the tunability and the range of riders you can set up the same product for is so vast. And if you've ever had to set up a bike that didn't have the right spring rate, you need to invest a lot of time. And sometimes you'll just be that guy who's at the right weight in gear where there's not a right rate for you. And so you have to make a compromise about, do I want it to be too stiff or too soft? And I don't personally enjoy that choice. As far as design or as far as the purpose they serve goes, they are similar in that respect, but the internal designs are obviously different.
Yeah, you have a lot more weight. You have a lot more.
Yeah, the weight of the motorcycle, what that fork has to deal with is a lot more significant. So everything's kind of bigger and beefier. There's a lot more oil involved. But yeah, I think the newest stuff is working on a closed damper cartridge with a little bit of an oil bath. I haven't been inside one in a while. I have to reach out to my good friend Randy McKay and get a little update on what the newest stuff is looking like inside.
So White Wolf says riders tend to drag the rear brake more so than the front. So why is it common to see larger front rotors in comparison?
I hear what he's saying. I think the reason is because, and we touch on this in the ride series, the front brake, even though you don't feel like you're utilizing it as much maybe as the rear, the front brake under braking has to do more work because it's trying to slow the train down, where the back brake is trying to hold it. And so the back wheel can just skid behind the bike and not really do a lot of work, where the front one, if it's got traction, is going to have to do a lot of work. Having said that, I typically run equal rotors front and rear. So if I can fit 200s on my bike, that's what I'm running. If not, then I'll have 180s front and rear. But I tend to wear out the back brakes more than the front.
Are you okay running 180s front and rear for most of your rides on South Mountain?
In most cases, yeah.
What are some exceptions to that?
Well, the bigger bikes that I go down steep stuff on, I typically will put 200s on. 403s, whatever they are.
So Andrew's talking about lever pull. It's funny he talks about lever pull. I love the SLX brakes, dude. The current
SLX brakes are fantastic brakes. I got a set of those almost like a joke. Like, I'll never use these, and I put them on and I was blown away. They are fantastic brakes.
Casey,
look at this guy.
Ching!
Woo, yeah.
2 lattes right there. Ooh,
and yes, Rob, you need to switch to clipless. Yes, you do.
I'm gonna let you answer, Casey.
If you want to have the most fun.
So you're saying Sam Hill doesn't have fun? That's what you just said, Rob. So I'm going to quote you.
I said if you want to have more fun. Sam Hill may have fun, but he would have more fun if he clipped in.
Interesting.
And he'd maybe be winning.
Casey, dude, that's a tough one. Are they holding you back? That's tough to say, man. You're supposed to have fun. We want you to have fun riding, plain and simple. All I'll say is if you switch to clipless, build in some time riding around in a grass field, clipping out over and
invest some time in getting your setup right.
Get your setup right. And dude, I promise right now, promising, when I come out there, we will make a video about that. It won't be super high Brock or Andy production value, but we will make a video on how you set yours up, and I'll give a little bit of input on mine. It's not quite as intense as yours, and you get intense, as people saw on the clipless video. Dude, I still get people joking about that. Actually, can you tell us what Rob thinks about clipless versus flats? And it's pretty funny. We're not going to rehash it right now because we've had a very civil conversation. Your blood pressure.
I was set up. I was set up on that one.
You were set up, yeah.
I was totally set up. There was a heckle squad behind the camera that you couldn't see, just egging me on. So
and you were baited with almond butter and jelly.
That's true. I was intoxicated by almond butter and jelly sandwich.
Okay, so we're an hour and 8. Dude, we have 81 people right now watching.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope we're keeping you engaged.
You're trying to get to 200. You want to get to 200.
Am I still breaking up like the Kardashians?
No, it's not bad, actually. It looks pretty good. So everybody here, tell your friends. Let's try to get Rob his 200.
I really felt like an audience of 200 was not out of reach.
So
I don't think it is.
I'm pretty excited. Outer Bike is here this weekend in Bentonville. So
I'm sorry, I'm not going to be there. One more event I'm missing out on.
One more event, but the week after, you're not missing out. Where are we headed, Rob Drew?
Johnson City, Tennessee.
Johnson City, Tennessee. So very cool event. Johnson City, Tennessee. We're going to go to Trek of Johnson City, and we're going to do 3 days of Ride Series events, various events presented by SRAM. So I'm very excited.
What's the place we're going to go to and get hot chicken?
I I don't remember if Andy's still here because you're flying into Nashville.
I'm flying into Nashville. I'm going to get me some hot chicken.
You and Justice are flying into Nashville, so you're going to get some hot chicken. Steve says we're great entertainment. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that.
You could be honest, Steve, and you could say I'm very entertaining and that I pull him along with me. It's okay. You can say that.
Come on.
Yeah, Rob is he's a tough guy. He can take it. So
yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So we're going to go there. And then immediately after, I'm driving to Phoenix. So I'll be in Phoenix for 4 weeks. We'll be doing clinics out there. So if you're watching and you're around Phoenix, St. George, Utah, San Diego, which I won't tell everybody what that means. We're going to be out there, and then we'll come back, Dallas and Houston. So 5 more opportunities for Ride Series clinics the rest of the year. And when I'm out there, we're going to make some content. So I'm going to force Rob to make some content and a few different things.
He's going to hover over me while I upload to YouTube.
Yeah, I'm going to make him upload, but we'll make some stuff. So we'll have it fresh, his latest thoughts. I'm going to bring a bunch of bikes. Rob's going to ride the large Izzo and get his feelings on that. If we can make it work, I don't know. Maybe there will be a downcountry / trail light shootout.
Downcountry.
If possible.
Decimation.
If possible. So a lot more to come. So I don't know where the best place to go. Instagram, probably. Like if you're watching this and you had a question that didn't get answered, shoot it on Instagram, either at the Rob Drew or at the Rich Drew. Topics.
Yeah, hit me with a direct message.
Yeah.
Get in my DMs.
Get
in my DMs. I'll hit you back. Slide in my DMs. I'll hit you back.
Questions that didn't get answered, but then also topics, like how-to topics. I got a great one. Like somebody talked about the body position video, but can we do one on like narrower off-camber, like exposed descents or terrain? And I thought, heck yeah, we can do that. We can do that one when I'm in Phoenix with you.
Yeah, because there's some good out on the west side. There's some good off-camber, sneaky little goat trails.
Yeah, there's a lot of carryover, but there's a couple of things I think that are very important that most people know about, but they just commonly overlook. So, all right, dude, that's all I have. 9:22, not too bad. I'm going to rest up and get ready to start Outer Bike tomorrow. I got some cool things going on for Outer Bike, but I can't really talk.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
But I can't talk about them.
There's never a doubt about how cool the things are.
So you'll see some of it on Instagram. Some of it. The stuff I'm allowed to show will go on Instagram. But yeah, there's going to be some top secret things going on.
Top freaking secret.
Top secret. GS27 classified.
Well, if anybody wants to see how fast I can eat a churro or some Mickey Mouse beignets, tune into my Instagram over the next 2 days because it's going off.
Yeah, Rob's.
I'll be destroying
some Strava, some Strava PRs on that. All right, cool.
Right. I'm gonna PR the Star Wars freaking Rise of the Resistance ride.
Thanks. Oh, wait a minute. We got one more. Saw the Ride Series was here in Illinois a few months back. Were both of you here? Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Great. The session went great. Rob was there. We were in Indianapolis and we were also in Chicago. But what I can tell you is you're going to have the opportunity again. So we're planning the next visit to both Indianapolis and Illinois. So we'll go back to the same place, probably right around.
Yeah, the venues in both cities were fantastic. The rain, we got pelted with some rain in the Chicago venue, but the spot was really, really cool.
Yeah, so we will keep your eyes open on social media. We'll talk about it on the website, therideseriesmtb.com. We will have that posted soon. We have a schedule laid out. We're vetting that schedule right now. It usually takes a couple rounds to go through to make sure that we cover everything. We don't overlap, or we overlap as little as possible. But my goal is to, by the end of November, have the full 2022 schedule out and ready so you can sign up. Because you just said you're ready. You want to attend one. So we're going to make it happen. All right, dude. Thank you for taking time again, Rob Drew, to chat with us.
My pleasure, pal. My pleasure.
We're going to grow, dude. It's going to be 200, then maybe.
I can't wait.
maybe 2,000.
2 million
Nah, it'd never be 2
followers. 2
million. But dude,
million
imagine if it
viewers.
was 2,000. How would you even
That'd be
answer all these
awesome.
questions? I don't
I
know.
would do the best. I would do the best I could. That's all
That's
I
all
can
you
do.
can do. Do the
That's all I
best.
can do.
Just do your best. All right, dude. Have a good night. Safe
You
travels.
do the same.
Disney.
I'll give Mickey Mouse a big hug for you.
Yeah, eat his beignet ears off for me.
Oh, I'm gonna go crazy on those things. Extra powdered sugar.
Nice. All right, dude. Have a good night.
See you, buddy.
Later.